Katarina Szécsi Åsbrink, Svédország budapesti nagykövetségének nagykövet helyettese, 4 éve tölti be e pozíciót Magyarországon. Diplomáciai karrierje előtt több nemzetközi intézménynél és a kulturális szektorban is dolgozott. Nemzetközi közgazdaságtant hallgatott, és korábban főképp a független államok közösségének országaiban, köztük Oroszországban és Közép-Ázsiában végzett diplomáciai munkát. Katarina a svéd feminista külpolitika szenvedélyes szószólója.
Dear Katarina, dear Deputy Ambassador, thanks for being here. And the mother of 3. Let me just add that. Very, very important. I just introduced you a minute ago saying that you were a devoted fighter for human rights, for women's rights, for equality, a knowledgeable expert on data and research on how to achieve that. So let me pose the most simple question. What makes you a feminist? What does feminism mean to you?
Well, thank you, Krista. It's wonderful to be here and to talk about one of my favorite subjects. I like to define, because it's important when we use words, and also I would stress that I am aware that the word feminism was a little bit kidnapped during communist times, and it may have different connotations. So when I say I'm a feminist, which of course I am, I want to define what I mean by being a feminist. And I think it's actually 3 things. First of all, I want to see real gender equality. I want women to have the same opportunities, rights as men. Number 2, I acknowledge that this is not the case today. We have a gender gap, a global gender gap. And 3, I want to do something about this. I want to close that gap, which means that I would like to be able to tell my daughter that she doesn't have to wait for a century to have the same opportunities and rights as my sons. And how I do this, well, I try to live as I preach. I use my gender glasses, my feminist lens on everything, which I am engaged in. I look for gender equality. I try to support women. I always ask the questions, where are the women? We can get back to that later. I try to use it when I raise my kids. I think it's extremely important to be a role model for your children. And I think it's something that I'm taking with me in all my work. That's how I'm a feminist.
You shortly mentioned that you were aware of the fact how the term feminism was kind of kidnapped. I think that was the term you used during communism. But there is another thing that still puts a chain on the flourishing of feminism in its term, which is when a lot of people still ask the silly question or use the silly comment whether feminists are the kind of women who dislike men for one reason or another. How do you deal with that comment?
No. Oh gosh. No, I love men. I mean, some more and some are less, obviously. I think it's very important, as you say, to say that feminism is not opposing men. It's opposing a system, a structural system, which does not give equal rights and opportunities to women. This is what feminism is about.
We're going to get back to this fact that was one part of the sentences that had to be paired with the certain countries, that Sweden had the first feminist government. Said we're going to get back to that. Tell us, please, Katarina, elaborate what it means in reality in terms of laws, regulations, education, advocacy, and all the rest.
Well, I can tell you for sure that it's not a slogan. It's a very serious thing and a very systematic work that we're pursuing. And a feminist government means that, for the Swedish government, gender equality is a central priority in all decision making, in including resource allocation. And it means that in all policy decisions, they are, you bring in a gender equality perspective. Nationally, internationally, it's always there. And actually, I want to add that we don't only have a feminist government. Sweden is also pursuing what we call a feminist foreign policy. So what is that? Yeah, wow. I mean, it's a wonderful thing, which we very much hope that we can export to a lot of other countries. And what it means, it's that we acknowledge that all the big challenges of the world, which we are dealing with when it comes to foreign policy, security, development, sustainability, they cannot be solved if we don't involve half the world population. So it means that the feminist foreign policy, it's an agenda for change. And we used to refer to that what we're doing is that we are strengthening what we call the 3 R's. So the 3 R's are representation, resources, and now I'm forgetting it just because we're sitting here right now. Sorry, this is a little bit embarrassing. Representation, resources, and
resources.
Okay, this is famous. So what we're doing is that we're pursuing this. We're applying these 3 R's, trying to strengthen them for all the women and the girls around the globe.
You mentioned at the very beginning that we started to talk with each other, the global gender gap. Please elaborate what you think we need to know in a nutshell as the most important facts about the global gender gap.
Exactly. So the global gender gap, it started with the World Economic Forum quite some time ago, starting to measure in an index in a way to show, the gender-based differences in terms of access to resources and opportunities. And they're compiling statistics, which in itself contains of, several parameters. We talk about economic empowerment, political representation, education, health. And from this data, we can see today that globally, on the global average, women have approximately 68% of what men have.
68%, you said.
Of what men have. In Sweden, it's a bit higher. Women have around 82, I think, percent. But yes, it's better. But we're not there. I mean, we're far away from parity. There is still a gap. I mean, also in Sweden. And actually, when you look at these numbers and you extrapolate them, you would see that it would take 136 years if progress, because there is progress, continues in the same pace as us. So my daughter would have to wait for 136 years to have the same opportunities as my sons. That's not okay.
Well, Katarina, closing the gender gap is a must. We take it for granted. It has to be done. And there are very, very many reasons, several reasons for doing so, moral reasons, economical reasons, educational, political reasons. I am interested in, personally, for you, what you think the priority of that list is. What do you think is the most important reason for doing that as fast as we can?
I mean, I believe that closing the gender gap, I mean, it's about, to put it simple, I mean, 2 things. I mean, first of all, it's about rights, the important R that I forgot earlier, Freudian, the most perhaps important. I mean, we have to remember that women's rights are human rights. And the nations of the world, they signed off. They said that we have an obligation to fulfill, to defend, and to respect everybody's human rights without any discrimination. So respecting women's human rights, it's international law. Huh? So that's the first. But then what we can see from so much data, it's that it's smart. It's very, very smart to pursue gender equality because you have tons of data out there showing everything you gain with improved gender equality. You see that you are increasing productivity, that you are cutting costs, that you are fostering innovation, you're spurring development, you are facilitating more inclusive decision-making. You even contributed to facilitating peace, retention for businesses, and so forth. I mean, there is so much evidence there. So if you want to have a bit of a more instrumentalist approach, you can also say it is very smart. I mean, if we look at the labor markets, which we are now also talking about today, if the labor market would be gender equal, we would add, substantial amount of growth to the world economy.
That you mentioned the instrumental approach, I wonder what instruments are there for us, are given for us, what best practices are there that could help us enhance female labor participation?
Well, a few of them. I mean, let's start gender equality would be my first answer to say that, in order to increase female labor participation, I think we can't escape one very obvious fact. And that's that, women cannot, on one hand, go to paid jobs and then go home to unpaid jobs. They cannot carry, which is the case today, because you have statistics about that also, that women around the world do at least 75% of all the household works, which include children, elderly parents, and all the chores at home. And I think that's something which we need to change. And that is, of course, very much linked to changing norms. And norms change with societies. We have to, so to say, look at all these, the whole, Sved Astal of things that are changing societies. And that's a mix. We have laws, we have policies, we have pressure from civil societies, we have role models, pioneers, progressive businesses, political will, etc. But I think that's the first thing we need to recognize, that, of course, men have to share equally the unpaid jobs. Otherwise, we can't move on.
We have to share the unpaid jobs with women may resonate with Nordic men more than with Hungarian men, without being rude to the very respectable Hungarian men of the Hungarian society.
Simply, I don't buy that. Just as a note, my husband is from Central Asia, so that argument does not convince me. I think, it's the 21st century, and I think that we should agree upon that, cooking and cleaning, it's a basic life skill. No? It's not a gender role. So I think it's extremely important to expect that and to demand that from grown-up adult men. And I think it's extremely important to show that in front of our children, because our children are observing us and they are replicating our behavior. And as all we parents know, children, they don't do what we tell them. The children, they do what we show them.
You know what, to agree with you that it's probably not genetic to Nordic men to share the paid and unpaid jobs. There's a Hungarian research telling us, it's not even a very fresh research, telling us that men who spend time, not only quality time, but substantial time with their children, have better health, both physical and mental. It's life-saving to spend time with your children if you're a man.
Absolutely, Krista. I mean, this is so to the point. I mean, that's what I think we also have to get out the message there, that this is a win-win-win situation for everybody, because you have the health argument for sure, but there's also a lot of research about, relationships improving. I mean, children benefiting from having more than one, so to say, present parents. We know definitely for sure that when it comes to women's health in terms of stress and burnout, the most important mitigating factor is to have an equal partner. So definitely there is so much to gain. That said, I would still also say that we are talking about redistribution of power. So there will be resistance. It always happens that there will be resistance, and we have to deal with that as well.
The title of this event that we're sharing together now has a question in it. Work and family, can they go hand in hand? Can they go together? ? Is your answer to this question, they have to go hand in hand, period? Can they really?
Yes, I think they can go hand in hand, but it's also conditions on certain, certain things. And I think we spoke about one part of it, which is, sharing the unpaid jobs, which we all have, which is part of life. But then, of course, an extremely important part is also to have family-friendly employers. So, of course, we have to realize that, once again, life consists of many things. And I think that nowadays employers are to a bigger degree also understanding that it is back to the famous life puzzle. It's a juggle. And I think that they do realize that, we need to have flexible working hours. We need to have teleworking opportunities. You probably can't have, meetings starting at 5 p.m. That's not a good idea. You should be able to stay at home with a sick kid. I mean, that should not be some kind of stigma. So I think, that kind of change where you realize that you have to accommodate people's lives in a way to make this possible is super important. And I think I want to stress that now during COVID and the kind of digital leap that we took now, I think that it could have a potential to contribute to that. That said, though, because with the reservation that unfortunately some of the research so far shows that it did not really happen, because still women were responsible for most of the housework at home. In addition to that, they also have to become teachers for their kids. And then, of course, we're not going to see any progress on gender equality. But otherwise, I think that this digital leap could contribute to flexible, more family-friendly employers and work time.
Thank you so much, Katarina, for being here, for hosting this event, for continuing your work, and for being both a diplomat and an activist. Thanks for your answers.
Thank you so much.
Hadd forduljak most újra hozzátok, kedves vendégek, kíváncsiak vagyunk a véleményetekre. Arra kérnénk most tőletek választ, hogy vajon szerintetek melyek azok a dolgok, amelyek a leginkább segítenek a munka-magánélet egyensúlyának a megteremtésében. Mutatunk 7 tényezőt, nem olvasom fel őket, nézzétek át nyugodtan magatokban, és választátok ki azt a 3-at, amelyik szerintetek a fontossági sorrendben az első 3 helyre teendő. 3 klikket kérünk tőletek, mindjárt mutatjuk. Már jönnek is a válaszok. Elmondom addig a kérdéseket. A nem fizetett háztartási, illetve gyermek- és idősgondozási munkák megosztása. Én nem látom a monitoron, azért kértem segítséget, de mondják a kollégák, hogy ti látjátok. A szülési szabadság megosztása 1, kifejezetten csak az apák által igénybe vehető szabadsággal. Gyermekgondozási intézmények fejlesztése, rugalmas munkaidő. Fizetett háztartás körüli gondozás, segítőkhöz való könnyebb hozzáférés, több nő a döntéshozó pozíciókban, korlátozó férfiasság minták és nemi sztereotípiák megkérdőjelezése. Amíg ezekre kapjuk a válaszokat, addig megvannak a kérdések Katarinához. Azt is begyűjtöttük. I got the questions here. Katarina, is it really different to be a feminist in Sweden, asks our viewer, and be a feminist here in Hungary, where the public communication legislation is going against feminists and women, basically? Here, lots of people don't understand what's really feminism is, and men try to put us in a traditional role box. This is a question of a member of the audience.
I mean, I would say no, there is no difference of being a feminist. I did explain to you how I define being a feminist, and I repeat, I mean, wanting gender equality, realizing that it's not there, and nobody is there, including Sweden, my own country, and wanting to do something about it. Then, of course, we can, I live in a country, I come from a country where we have pursued this for a long, long time, and we have achieved taking a lot of big leaps. We talked about changing norms, which definitely has happened. We talked about employers providing family-friendly places. One much more important, also even more important thing that we did not touch so much about, but I would like to touch upon it, is of course robust social security system, because I mean it's extremely important to remember that, you know, in order, for example, to return after you had maternity or paternity, nota bene leave, you also have to have childcare services. There has to be infrastructure in place where you can, you know, take care of it, your sick child, where you can work part-time and so forth. And in Sweden, we do have this opportunity that, for example, I as a mother or as a father, I can, from the age of 1, the children have the right to have a place in kindergarten. And we even have it subsidized in the way that it won't ruin us financially. But I think the aspirations and the goals are the same. And then I think all countries have to, look when it comes to this toolbox that I mentioned in terms of change. And I think that Sved Astal can provide opportunities in all different contexts.
Thank you very much, Katarina. There are some more that we're going to be answering in emails.